This will include the following cohorts or group of students who will form part of this 33%. It will be all groups that have already returned during level 4, as I have outlined. But then also we will then prioritize students in the final year of their programs who are on a path to graduating if they finish their 2020 academic year completely. Also, amongst this group, the first 33% will be final year students who require access to laboratories, technical equipment, data, connectivity, and access to residence and private accommodation will also be allowed to return to be part of this first 33% at level 3. Students in all years of study will also be allowed to return if they require clinical training in their programs, provided that the clinical training platforms have sufficient space and can accommodate them while adhering to the safety protocols, especially physical distance and maintenance of personal hygiene. The other group of students that we will allow under level 3 to go back as part of this 33% will be postgraduate students who require laboratory equipment and other technical equipment to undertake their studies. In addition to the above, institutions may also consider selected return of other categories of students to residencies who may face extreme difficulties in their home learning environments, provided that the above categories are prioritized and all safety and logistical requirements are met.
Matooane also announced free data allocations for all students currently receiving NSFAS funding.
On devices for NSFAS and Funza Lushaka University students, we acknowledge that the cost of connectivity remains a huge barrier for students who want to use the digital learning mode as part of our multimodal and remote learning. I want to thank the officials in my Department of Higher Education and Training, my colleagues and officials in the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as the electronic network providers, including the mobile network operators, that have already zero-rated educational content sites of our public universities, TVET, community education and training colleges, including agricultural and nursing colleges. What does this mean? It means that access to websites from all of our institutions is essentially free. That is what zero rating means. That it's not, we are not going to use your data to be able to access these zero-rated sites. You're not going to be charged.
We continue reaction with regards to the minister's media briefing that happened a short while ago. Dloze Matooane, Young Communist League President, National Spokesperson rather, joins us via Skype. Dloze, welcome to SABC News Channel. Firstly, let's get your reaction with regards to the minister's announcement earlier this afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity. Greetings to you and greetings to your viewers. Our reaction as the Young Communist League is that we firstly do welcome the announcements that are made by the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Dloze Matooane. However, we still have our own reservations, as we had even said earlier with the Department of Basic Education, that for us, we can only say we are fully confident or even confident thereof only after we have assessed the progress that is made. We're never going to allow any students to go back to university under standards that are not of the best and highest possible standards in terms of safety for our students, because we're dealing with a pandemic that is continuing to develop and not really at a linear scale. But however, we have our own concerns as well. As we have earlier alluded to the issue of TVET students, that our challenge with TVET students is that those who are doing trimesters were supposed to write before the announcement of the national lockdown. and the minister did not really touch much in terms of what is going to happen to those students. Secondly, we do accept and welcome also the fact that NSFAS continues to pay accommodation, but we're concerned, however, that the minister and the government generally does not address the issue of student accommodations that continues to charge our students higher than what NSFAS can pay. Thirdly, even though we welcome what the minister said with regard to missing middle, the issue of him trying to find solutions to assist the missing middle students with loans. What about those in private institutions currently and also experiencing, on loans such as Edu loan? What is it going to happen now that everyone is been given debt relief and rental relief? What about those students who are also from poor and working class backgrounds, including the missing middle, who are also facing challenges financially right now? And those are the issues that we as the YCL think that the minister did not touch on. For example, the minister says NSFAS students would be able to acquire laptops using the NSFAS scheme and so on, but he does not say anything about those students who are also poor, who are not on NSFAS.
Speak to us about your take in as far as education safety. You mentioned that you will not allow any students to go back to varsity. Earlier we spoke to SASCO and they said, look, students want to go back to campus. Are you guys in agreement? Where do you stand? Are you saying that students do not want to go back? Are you yourself going to prohibit students from going back if you feel that they're not properly catered for?
Listen, we do understand, firstly, that for some courses, especially clinical courses and some postgrad courses, as the minister has also alluded, that they cannot be saved besides in the classroom and in the labs. However, we're dealing with the pandemic here. That is the reason why we had a lockdown in the first place. Therefore, we are not going to allow students to go back to school on the basis that we need to save their academic calendar, whereas their safety is compromised. The minister previously had promised us that they are going to do thorough deep cleaning of all institutions, number one. Number two, the minister had also promised that regulations in terms of safety would be put in place in terms of social distancing and other requirements that are needed in terms of cooperation within a space such as institutions of higher learning when we speak about the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, we first need to be assured that the best possible safety standards are put in place, then we can allow students to go back. Listen, we also want students to go back to class without a doubt. We understand that for some students we need who also even do practicals need to go back to class, but we're not going to do so compromising their safety. We have also made it public previously that the issue of data and online learning is going to be a very bit difficult for our students on the basis that on the basis of the inequalities that we find within the education system. So we're saying, yes, let students go back to campus, let students go back to class, but we're not going to allow students to go back to class under circumstances that put their safety at risk. We are a very responsible organization.
Yeah. With the minister speaking about the phased-in approach and how the students will be returning to campus, at level 2, for example, another 33% will be brought into campus at level 3, etc., etc. Are you happy with that approach? Because I'm sure looking at this approach, there you'll be able to gauge on whether there are infections or there's low risk of infection. By that time, you would know how safe campus is. With
the Department of Basic Education when it announced their phased-in approach, and even with this one, that we still have some time before students can go back to class. And that is the time that we're also going to use to assess on whether the safety of students have been prioritized. And we also would be using the era or the moment after students go back to class also to assess on whether the safety of students have been prioritized. With the phased-in approach, generally, we are quite happy. For example, on TVET colleges, they have prioritized the TVET students to go back to save their academic calendar. We're happy with that, basically because of they do not have any computer literacy course as part of their studies, and therefore cannot be subjected to online studies or to online learning. With that, we're happy. Even with the universities, in terms of taking first final years and those who are doing postgrad and clinical studies, that would be those that are in the medical field and so on. I mean, those are people that are, in our view, quite responsible enough to can take care of themselves and observe safety standards. And I think they are also knowledgeable to can operate with such an environment. But we'll continue to make our assessment, yes, prior students going back to school and post the first cohort going to school.
Dloze Matooane, Young Communist League of South Africa's national spokesperson, thank you indeed for joining us right here on SABC News Channel.
Thank you.
Now, the Eastern Cape